Hi, thank you for joining us on our expert series. Today we have Cristy Stebelton from Ohio. She's part of our Homeschool Moms in Business group, and she's a podcast manager for five different podcasts, primarily focusing on Christian women in business. So today she's going to talk to us about podcasting. What it takes to get started, the benefits of podcasting. Are you ready for a podcast? All that kind of stuff. So I want to let Cristy take the floor.
Great. Thanks, Daphne. Appreciate the welcome. Yeah, actually, if you're interested in podcasting to support your business, it's not too hard to start. You don't have to invest in a lot of equipment. It's not very expensive. You literally need a laptop or a desktop, a way to record your podcast, which software is readily available free. Um, a mic helps a lot, but if you have a headphone with a wired mic in line, and most of the headphones that you get right now do have this inline mic, and that makes it really simple to do recording. So actually getting your message recorded and onto the laptop is not the hard part. If you wanted to do a little bit better in terms of your sound quality, you could invest in a mic. I've bought mics for $20, $25 at Walmart. It does not have to be the latest, greatest, and you shouldn't spend a lot of time on purchasing equipment. What you really want to do is spend a lot of time thinking about recording on paper what the purpose of your podcast is. So you can spend a little time thinking, what do I want to achieve with this podcast? There are two kinds of podcasts. There are entertainment podcasts. They can be a hobby or an interest that you have that you just love to talk about and you want to share with the world. But when you're in a women's group, a business women's group, a homeschooling business women's group, more than likely you want that podcast to support your business. And one of the best ways and an easy way to grow your business is with podcasting. So, what we love most about podcasting and what I've learned over the last 3 years is that you build a community with podcasting. When you listen, if you ever listen to a podcast, you feel like that person is speaking directly to you. It's not a canned video. You're just listening to them talk, much like we used to when we actually talked to people on the phone. And the beauty of it is that you can do other things while you're listening to the podcast. So if you find your business has a marketing need or a networking need, or you need to find resources and you spin up a podcast, you feel like you're getting the information that you need in a way that's easy to digest, and you can always go back and find that one resource or that one person that spoke to your business, spoke to what your need in your business was. So community building, building relationships, podcasts do that. But in order to get to that point where you're building a community for your business, you have to be very crystal clear about what you can offer that community and what you can give them information on. And so you really want to be clear. This is what I want to tell people about, and this is why I want to tell them. Yes, we all want our businesses to succeed, and I love talking about podcasting, and I get a lot of business inquiries when I talk about podcasting because I'm very animated and excited about it. That does help, but you really have to know what you're talking about. So the other thing that we also look at when we say that, podcasting can grow your business is authority building. When someone talks with confidence and with knowledge and information about something, they build their authority in that arena. It doesn't really matter which business you're in. If you know your business and you can communicate it effectively, podcasting is a fantastic way to build your authority among other people that are interested. We network with podcasting. You might reach out to other people. You might get the attention of other people who say, I really like what that person said. I like her. She's talking very clearly. She's making her points known really well. And, you know, I really need a virtual assistant, or I really need someone to do, my books, or I really need someone to find service providers for me. When you speak with authority, when you're helping your community, you network with other people that are familiar with your business. And that's how we spread the word. That's how we get more customers. Lastly, and usually what most people focus on first, and it's kind of unfortunate, is that it can be revenue building. Even if you're supporting your business with your podcast, even if you've got a lead magnet, something that tells people to come and see what you're about, you can also monetize. There are spaces for advertisements in any podcast. You can put it in the beginning, called a pre-roll. You can put it in the middle, called a mid-roll, or at the end of the episode. You can sell ad spaces. You can advertise for your own business. It doesn't really matter. You can earn income from the podcast itself. You can form sponsorships, or you can form alliances with other businesses and trade advertisements. There's a lot of ways that you can monetize, but, and this is a big but, advertising usually comes when you have more listeners. So to build listeners, you have to build community, you have to establish authority, and you have to network with people. And networking isn't always about selling your services or selling your product. It's about forming relationship. It's a professional relationship, or in the point of community building, it's listener relationships. You want to be available to your listeners, and they like you, they want to come back and listen more. So that's primarily what we use podcasting to grow your business. Now, I do have clients that are in one business, but they have hobby podcasts, and they want their hobby podcast to support itself and then kind of backdoor into their business. One person has a hobby podcast, one of my clients, that supports her website development, and she does website development, but her podcast has nothing to do with website development. You can do that. Some other podcasts are very plain. They want you to understand what their field is about, what services they offer. They often give away really valuable information so that you're considered someone they can trust. Maybe they want to do whatever it is you're offering, or maybe they want the product that you're talking about, whether it's a nutrition plan, whether it's service-based business. Maybe they want those things. They can't do it right now, but they've been listening for 3 months, 6 months, and they keep saying, wow, that person on that podcast just shares so much good information. When I'm going to take that class, it's going to be hers. Or when I'm going to do that service, it's going to be that one. So, like I said, it is not hard to record. It is not hard to get your message out there. You're going to record it, and then there's a whole process involved, but you can do it yourself. You don't have to hire someone like me. And the beauty of my business is that I do help people do it, but on the same token, I say, this isn't rocket science. If I could learn how to do it, you could do it too. It's just going to take you a little bit of research. You're going to have to, like I said, be very clear about what message you want to communicate. Make a list of 20 things in your business or in your service-based business, whether it's a product business, that you feel so confident about talking about, that if I walked up to you in the middle of a Bible study, or in the middle of a coffee meeting, or a Sunday lunch, and said, Tell me about your business. Tell me about some of the things you like to talk about. If you can put a list of 20 together, you will be more successful than 70% of the podcasts out there, because most podcasts quit before the 12th episode. I have podcasts that are at episode 85, 87. I have other podcasts that are just in the 15 and 16 episode range. They are already past that point that most podcasts quit. There is plenty of space in there's plenty of room in the space for you. So if you think, oh my goodness, everybody's got a podcast about being an online business manager, or everybody's got a podcast in this field or that field, it's simply not true. Your voice is different. What you have to say is important, and we add to the conversation. So those are kind of some of the things that I like to talk about most. The last thing that I was going to say is, don't let the technical worry you. It does take a little bit of practice, and there's a way to set up your recording situation so that you get the best audio possible. I'm in a very open room. I do have a desktop mic, and I always wear headphones. If you do one thing, wear a pair of wired headphones when you record. If you can only do two things, wear a pair of wired headphones and use some kind of mic, because your laptop mic is not going to give you good sound ever. And if you don't wear headphones, your mic will pick up the sound from your laptop speakers, and you don't want that echo. So that's on sound. Then if you're good at speaking, if you practice well and you record well, the truth be told, you can record a podcast on your cell phone. You don't need anything. You can record it just like this, and you can publish it. There's free publishing hosts. Anchor is a free publishing host that you can use. The host that I like to recommend the most is Buzzsprout, because they are very Christian friendly, and they're very easy to work things through on your own. If you don't hire someone like me or another manager, it's not so technically difficult that you can't just figure it out for yourself. And they have an excellent community support system. So if you're like, I can't get this episode to upload, go out to Facebook, to the Buzzsprout group, type your question. About 5 different people will answer you. So I like that. Cost wise, continuing cost for a podcast beyond maybe a little bit of purchase of very inexpensive equipment. Buzzsprout costs about $12 a month for most people's podcasting needs. I do also pay for Canva, which is a graphic design program. I do store podcasts on either Dropbox or Google Drive. There are usually free options for every paid option. It all depends on what it is that you're hoping to do. Audacity is a free software that you can record your podcast on. It's that simple. Or you can find an app and just record on your phone, upload it right there, and get started. Just try it. If you don't like it and it doesn't feel right to you, or you're not happy with what you're producing, you can stop. You can cancel. You can try again. It's one of the most forgiving and freeing things to try. It's not like investing into a marketing system that maybe the training costs you hundreds of dollars and then you find out, I hate doing this. With podcasting, you can try and then stop, or you can try and then pivot and try something different. It's the simplest thing in the world. It's also the still independent, open, free exercise of thoughts. And as Christians, it's also one of the last frontiers where we have the freedom to say what we want to say with very little blowback, because people will not go out and hunt down your podcast, especially if it's gospel based, and do it to annoy you. People who want to hear your podcast are looking for you. You're promoting to the people you want to follow you. You're not promoting to people that are going to come and antagonize you. So I love it for that reason. I feel like it's still a free and open frontier for communication. Um, so that's pretty much what I try to tell people about podcasting. I think it's a neat exercise in supporting your business. I think it's a wonderful way to get your message out. And I am so open to answering any questions that anybody has in this group about podcasting. I am full up with clients right now, but I would be happy to answer your questions. And if you're really intent on getting someone to help you, I do know some wonderful podcast managers that I can recommend in my place.
Thank you, Cristy. That was a lot of
Sure.
information. You answered a
I
lot of my
know.
questions.
I know. I'm so sorry. I
Oh,
always
no,
worry
no, it
that
feels
I'm
great.
over informing, but I'm like, this is all, this information took me about 6 months to put together, just from finding it in different
Right.
places and going into programs and stuff. And I was like, that information or not having access to that information should not stop you from podcasting. Here, let me give it to you. It's recorded. You can go back and listen again and
Yeah.
find out what you're looking for. Yeah.
So I do have a couple of questions. So say somebody's
Sure.
like brand new, they're starting out, they feel like a podcast would work well for their
Hmm.
business.
Yeah.
And then you talked about some of the technical stuff.
Hmm.
Where do they host this? Because there's several, like there's Apple has podcasts and
Okay. Yeah.
iHeartRadio and all these different
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
What is the difference between all of those?
Okay. Well, when you record a podcast, your podcast has to have a place to live, and that's called a podcast host. The hosts are companies like Libsyn, Buzzsprout, Anchor, Riverside FM, I think is another one, Zencaster. Their hosts, that's where your podcast lives. But places like Apple or Spotify or iHeart or Amazon Music or even Stitcher, those are players.
Okay.
So you upload your podcast to a host, and the host, when you schedule a day and time, pushes it out to all the players
Wow.
that you've linked to your host.
Okay.
So, as an example, the podcast that I work for, they all want to be, and I'll be honest, the players you want to be on are Spotify, Apple, and then those are the two major shareholders.
Okay.
Okay, that's where almost everyone listens to podcasts. And then way down the list is Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. A lot of podcast players will just pick up your podcast feed from Apple or Spotify.
Okay.
So, if you can get on those two, and it's as simple as like posting the show to it. It's not like they have to approve you. Really, they're just looking for like dangerous material. So if you don't have dangerous material, you're fine. And their definition of dangerous material is like super dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's my husband just walked in. I was like, we're recording. Get out of here. But yeah. So really, it's not hard. It's not hard to do at all. It's just having that kind of that roadmap, and the information is out there. You can Google how to start a podcast, and
Hmm.
it'll give you step by step by step. There are a lot of steps, but once you do that, it then becomes much easier
Right.
week to week, week
Okay.
to week. There
And I
is
think so. My
no,
next question is
go
like,
ahead.
some podcasts are considered podcasts, and yet they're still very like recorded like this, and people will
Mhm,
put those out. So they will be
mhm.
on the podcast, or they'll also like post those videos on YouTube. Is that
Absolutely.
still considered a podcast in your opinion, or?
Podcasting is, well, okay, YouTube is a very unique phenomenon, and a lot of people do record their videos and they do use the audio from that video as a podcast
Okay.
episode. If you're comfortable with video, you can certainly do that. YouTube has an audience of its own. And actually, people search on YouTube because YouTube, and this is the librarian in me from a past life, YouTube is actually a search engine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're going to have people that go to YouTube and say, "Hey, I want to find a channel that has current events from, let's say, a far right or a far left perspective." You can
Hmm.
type all of that in the top, and it will pop up YouTube channels that will fill that need. And so a lot of podcasters are doing video there. Now, you can take the audio from that video and then also post it as a podcast.
Okay.
The
Okay.
difference between the two is that not a lot of people walk or jog with a YouTube podcast. They'll walk or jog with an audio podcast.
Hmm.
Or if they're doing the dishes, or they're trying to sit down and get their kids to do math, or if they're doing other things in their house, they tend more towards the audio podcasts.
Okay.
But I'm not discounting that, if, especially like if you are a product-based business and you want to show your customers what this looks like, how this works, that makes a lot of sense. You can also port that audio over to a podcast fairly
Okay.
simply.
Okay, well, that's good to know because I was
Mhm.
sort of confused. I was like, well, that's still like video to me, but they're calling it a podcast. So yeah, I get
Yeah,
it.
and
Okay.
that's okay. I mean, there are no rules. Is
Yeah.
is kind of the nice thing. I mean, I guess there's a drawback because it does make it a little confusing, but I actually like the freedom. You can have
Right.
you can
Right.
have both and still call it a podcast.
So
Sure.
now when you're starting a podcast,
Hmm.
coming up with something like a cover or a podcast
Hmm.
episode, I don't know if they're different for each episode, covers for different episodes, or you just use basically the same one. But are you using Canva to do those? And is it kind of like you're staying consistent, with your branding
Okay.
throughout that podcast?
Typically what I do when I launch a podcast is we ask the person involved to have a concept about a podcast cover art. And your cover art is for your show,
Okay.
the whole show. I use a graphic design artist, and I recommend him to everyone, because he is affordable for graphic art, and he is excellent at getting to the message that you're trying to communicate visually. He has about 20 years experience working in branding and advertising. So I love him, and that's where I send people, and I tell people to expect to pay $250 for a podcast cover art. Why? Can you do this in Canva? Yes, you can. If you think this is going to be something that you're going to grow alongside your business, then you want to invest in the podcast cover art. If this is going to be a part of your marketing plan and small to start, you can create them in Canva. I've created them in Canva. You can ask a friend who maybe is very graphic design oriented to do it too. It all depends on what kind of investment you're making in your podcast. So yes, Canva is a very good way. I use Canva personally, not for podcast art, but for promotional materials. All of my social media promotional materials,
Hmm.
my audiograms, clips from the show that I use to promote. I will create all of my art in Canva. Mhm.
Nice, nice. So somebody could definitely get started on their own and then decide, what, I
Absolutely.
want to invest in this. I'm going to go ahead
Absolutely.
and,
Yes.
and
Almost
be able
every
to.
part of podcasting, you can do that.
Yeah.
There are resources available to bring people on. Maybe you don't want to do the editing anymore. Maybe, as an example, I say a lot, and if I do an interview, I try to be mindful of not using the word
Yeah.
but a lot of people will want those ums taken out, and they don't have the time because they're busy. And that's a big case for an editor or a podcast manager. If you're busy doing your business, you want someone else to do that
Yeah,
kind of
smaller stuff.
annoying
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of annoying stuff.
And
So,
then the other question,
yeah.
I guess that I have would be, what soft, because you recommended a host, you said Buzzsprout,
Buzzsprout,
right? Okay. What other
Buzzsprout.
softwares are your recommendation that you really feel are critical
Sure. I'll just put Buzzsprout in the chat.
in the chat?
Yeah, the software that is free to download for any computer is called Audacity, and that is spelled AUDACITY.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a little it's not really complicated, but you do have to have patience when you're learning how to do it. Another one that I know you can record with is called Auphonic. Also, you can use whatever recording device you have on your cell phone. I have voice recorder on Samsung. Um, I've recorded audio on voice recorder.
Okay.
You can use that. Anything that's going to record your voice and saves as an MP3 is good for podcasting. Saves as an MP3 or as a WAV file, because MP3 is the format of an audio file, and that's what your host needs you to upload.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. So other than that, I mean, the process seems fairly like simple. I mean, yes, it's
It
several
is.
steps, but
But it is simple. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I feel like if you can set up your social media profiles, it's along those same lines. You
It
kind of have,
really is.
yeah,
It really is. I think where a lot of people get stuck is that equipment idea.
right.
My audio has to sound as good as some of the most popular podcasts. And number one, your listeners are very forgiving because they're already sold into your message. They want to
Mm-hmm.
hear what you have to say. But also, we can't afford the kind of studio time that a Joe Rogan or Dave
Right.
Ramsey or,
Right.
whoever you like to listen to, we can't afford the setups that they have. Let's be honest, they're corporately sponsored.
Right.
Um, so don't get stuck there. Just get out there and try. It's fun, and it's also a really great way to funnel people to your business. When you want your podcast to be successful, have something that you're offering them and have them come back to your website or wherever you collect your emails,
Mm-hmm.
because your listeners should not camp out on social media. They should be coming to your website, signing up for your newsletter or your
Right.
lead magnet
Right.
so that you own that list. Podcasts right now, like I said, is still free and clear. It's not restrictive, but we know how quickly that can change. Get the people that are interested in you to come to your business site.
Great. That's
You
great
know,
advice. I didn't think about that.
yeah.
The other, I guess my next thought based off of that is, where are you finding followers? So like you're promoting it like in your circle, and then of
Hmm.
course you're putting it on places like you said, Apple or Spotify, so people
Yes,
can find
yes,
you. So
yes.
how do you start to gain that traction with like new
Sure.
followers?
Sure. Let me give you just a quick like lead up to that. If I'm recording a podcast, which I'm going to be doing a gospel-based podcast fairly soon, if I'm recording my podcast, I've got it all set up the way I want it. I upload it to my host. I schedule it to release next Tuesday, and it goes out to Apple and Spotify. What I'm going to do then is a couple of things. I'm either using my personal social media accounts to promote the episode, or I'm using a podcast account to promote those episodes. That's on my personal end. But a more important thing to do is to organically reach people. And the way that I suggest that podcasters do that is if you like someone in the field that you're in, as an example, I'm a podcast manager. There's another podcast manager that had a great training program. I learned a lot of things when I was following her and when I was involved in a couple of her courses. I love her. I adore her. I follow her on social media. I also mention or advise or give information or suggestions to the people that follow her. Because let's take someone like, I'm trying to think who might be popular to everyone, but like Jenna Kutcher, or I'm going to say some names. Tell me when you know one. Um,
Yeah, I'm going blank
you
here.
know, I'm going blank too. So, but you know, someone big, someone in big in business circles, someone, you know, Christy Wright used to be really popular, and she had her business boutique, which was helping women start small businesses. And she had dozens and dozens and hundreds and then thousands and thousands of followers. And she had a group that I was a part of, and it was a paid group because I bought her program. Now, you don't have to buy every program, there are free groups too. But I followed her because I liked her and she gave me good information. And so did a whole bunch of other people. And then every once in a while, somebody would say something like, you know, I want to start a podcast, or I'm starting a podcast. Where can I find information on any of the questions you asked me today?
Hmm.
And I'd just sit there and I'd say, hey, I'm a podcast manager. What I tell my clients to do is this.
Right,
Now, I'm not pitching business.
right,
I'm just giving value.
right,
So
right.
give value in your area of expertise on other people's accounts. Don't say, can I DM you my fabulous, great offer?
Yeah.
No. Give them a little bit of information and say, hey, if you're a tax professional and you know they're saying what kind of software should I use? You can say, look, most of my clients use this kind of software.
Hmm.
I recommend it because it's easier for me as a bookkeeper or as a tax expert to go back and help you file your taxes. What have you done there? You've given them valuable information for free. You've told them you're an expert in this field because you had very smart advice to send to them. And they now know, oh, you know what? There's that person. She knows about this stuff. I'm going to look for her. I'm going to write down her name. I'm going to friend her on social media. Or reach out to me if you have any more questions. And then you get a DM saying, hey, I asked you about this. What do you think about this? And you go,
Hmm.
you know what? I've got a free 20-minute discovery call. I can't take any more clients right now. And I tell people this all the time, but I'll talk to anybody for 20 minutes about podcasting.
Yeah.
Just send me a message,
Yeah.
you know, and they'll go, well, is it right for me? And I'll go, well, how much time do you have? How much energy do you have? How many topics do you have? Are you willing to put the time and energy into this? You don't have to pay for it, but you know what?
It does.
Time is
Yeah.
expensive
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So all that to say, you know, be genuine, be generous. Be genuine, be generous. And you can find ways to promote your business in groups that are not just your own and not just your own account. I have podcasters that don't take my advice and they don't grow their shows. And I keep coming back to them and saying, I gave you a social media plan where you go as you and talk to other people about what you know. Because when you have something like podcasting that is very much based in, we have a relationship because you're listening to what I have to say, then you go and say, I'm going to give you help and it's not going to cost you anything. I love what I'm doing. And you know what? You'll love what I'm doing too.
Hmm.
Here's why.
Yeah.
You know, we want to build trust. We already set authority. We already set community. We already set networking on the podcast. They then go, oh, I had this great interaction with this person who sold widgets. And she has a podcast about widgets. I'm going to go listen.
Yeah.
Why? Because everyone will click on your profile. And in your profile is your link to your podcast. And your
Smart.
podcast is free. Is free.
Yeah.
So it's just another option. I think it's a fabulous way to work. I've loved it as a Christian. I've loved being able to help people. I've loved being able to talk about Christ, inviting people to hear me talk about Christ, inviting people to talk to me about podcasting. But do it organically, do it
Right.
naturally. Become that person, become
Right.
that helpful person. Mhm.
Awesome. That's great advice. Well, Christy, Thank you for your time today. Thank you for
Oh, you're
talking to us about
welcome.
podcast. I learned a lot. Like there's a lot that I didn't know.
Oh,
So
great.
this was great. I feel like the women in our group will really appreciate that. You'll probably have some people reaching out to you to ask you some more
They are
questions.
more than welcome to do that. I'll keep an eyeball on any comments when you post the video. If you direct me, it's Cristy Stebelton. If you tag me in your question, even in the video,
Mhm.
I'll come around and answer them for you.
Okay. Well, that sounds great. Thank you for your
Yeah.
time today.
Thank you. Thanks, Daphne.